It's another lovely Saturday morning, and you're welcome to this week's edition of China Now, where you get the very best of news happening in China and beyond. My name is Makiza Latifa. Let's start the show with China Currents with Lisa. Here, you'll get your weekly news report of what's happening in China. Top of our list this morning, and German automakers are increasing their investment in China despite opposition from the government. And also, Chinese warship exercised their right to freedom of navigation in the English Channel. And a tad later, Lisa will tell you more about how the Pentagon lost a lawsuit to a Chinese company. There's this and many more coming your way shortly. Please stay tuned.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on what's happening in China. I'm Lisa. In this episode, the Pentagon lost a lawsuit to a Chinese company. The US Navy encountered Chinese vessels on Pacific patrol. Chinese warship exercised their right to freedom of navigation in the English Channel. A Japanese veteran from Unit 731 came to China to offer an apology. German automakers are increasing their investment in China despite opposition from the government. First, let's focus on a lawsuit. On the 12th of August, the Pentagon backed down in the face of legal action from a Chinese company, Hesai Technology, which specialized in producing LiDAR, a crucial component for self-driving cars. It is headquartered in Shanghai and listed on Nasdaq. In January of this year, the US Department of Defense added Hesai Technology along with 45 other Chinese companies to its blacklist, labeling them as Chinese military companies, which means Hesai was accused by the US government for being owned or cooperating with the Chinese military, restricting American investors from buying its shares. In response, Hesai Technology filed a lawsuit against the Pentagon in May. The company argued that there was no evidence linking it to China's military and called the Pentagon's decision to be arbitrary and capricious. Hesai has requested a federal court in Washington to issue a summary judgment, with a hearing scheduled in September. According to a report from the Financial Times, the US government lawyers were concerned that the justification for blacklisting Hesai wouldn't withstand legal scrutiny under the 2021 legislation. Simply saying Hesai was affiliated and engaged in research partnership with the Chinese Ministry of Industry and Information Technology wasn't enough to meet the legal requirements. Hesai responded that the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology was akin to a US regulatory agency. In fact, the department is mainly responsible for implementing policies in the fields such as postal service, internet, wireless, broadcasting, etc. If the Pentagon identified this department as a military office, they will need to similarly classify the Department of Commerce to be consistent. In the light of these concerns, the Pentagon has now decided to remove Hesai from its blacklist, acknowledging that it does not meet the legal criteria for inclusion. The Biden administration has consistently scrutinized the data security of Chinese high-tech products. However, Hesai has maintained that its products are strictly for commercial and civilian use, a claim supported by its partnership with US technology giants. Notably, ZooX, an autonomous robot taxi company acquired by Amazon for over $1 billion, has a publicly known partnership with Hesai. A new Forbes legal survey revealed that 93% of Americans have concerns about self-driving cars, particularly with regards to safety. LiDARs, which use laser beams to measure the distance of objects around vehicles, can significantly provide more safety protection for pedestrians and drivers than pure vision sensor solutions. It was dismissed by Elon Musk in 2019 because of the high cost of production. But now, with the considerable needs generated by Chinese EV makers, the rapid expansion of the LiDAR industry has greatly spread the research and development cost. The price of LiDAR sensors have dropped from thousands of dollars over the past few years to several $100s. According to industry research firm Royal Group, more than 70% of the world's automakers are now choosing to collaborate with Hesai in developing self-driving cars. Among the world's 8 major robot taxi companies, 4 are from the United States, including Tesla, GM, Ford, and AutoX, all of which have partnered with Hesai in manufacturing or R&D. The global robot taxi market is projected to reach $45 billion by 2030, offering significant opportunities for American investors. However, the Pentagon's previous blacklisting of Hesai created risk for companies and its partners, even threatening to deter American investments. The Financial Times pointed out it is an embarrassing setback for the US government. But in fact, it is not the first time that the US government has faced such a situation. In 2021, the Pentagon similarly removed Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi from its blacklist after Xiaomi sued, arguing the blacklisting was unconstitutional. In other related developments, the Biden administration recently decided to delay the increased tariff on Chinese imports, originally set for August 1st, has further underscored concern about the impact on American businesses. The delay had been met with positive reaction from China, with the Chinese embassy in Washington stating they're pleased to see US correcting discriminatory practice and providing a fair, just, and non-discriminatory business environment for Chinese companies. The news outlet Global Times said the delay indicated the irreplaceability of Chinese technologies. However, American intelligence expert James Mullivan cautioned that Congress may soon update 2021 law, potentially allowing the Pentagon to re-blacklist Hesai. While in Germany, when a government has taken a less than friendly stance towards China, companies have consistently made more rational business decisions. According to Financial Times report on the 13th of August, despite calls for caution from the German government regarding investment in China, German capital had been flowing into the country at a record-breaking pace. This year, investment has surged beyond all expectations, exceeding the total of previous years in just first half alone. Data from the German central bank paints a stark picture of this economic trend. German direct investment in China skyrocketed to $2.71 billion in the first quarter of the year. The figure nearly doubled to a remarkable $5.25 billion in the second quarter. This staggering growth resulted in a cumulative investment of approximately $8.96 billion for the first half of this year, significantly exceeding the total investment for the entire previous year. Just a year ago, the Scholz administration urged caution in trading relations with China, emphasizing the need to mitigate risk by diversifying supply chains. Despite these governmental concerns about geopolitical uncertainties, German automotive giants remained undeterred, leading in the charge in investing in China. Analysts like Daniel Rose from Rhodium Group predicts this fervent investment trend will continue throughout the year. Moving on, in a story reported by Newsweek on 12th of August, it has come to light that a US Navy destroyer, USS Rafael Peralta, had a close encounter with Chinese naval ships while on patrol in the Western Pacific last month. What's interesting is that the Peralta's official page on Facebook said it protected Guam during Chinese and Russian deployments in the area, but later the reference was quietly deleted. The USS Rafael Peralta, one of the 9 Ali Brooke-class destroyers based in Japan, is part of the 7th Fleet's Principal Service Force in Western Pacific and Indian Oceans. This encounter followed a significant 2-week joint naval patrol by China and Russia. While neither nation disclosed the precise route, they hinted that it covered parts of the Western and Northern Pacific Ocean, stretching over 4,800 nautical miles, suggesting that their fleet may have ventured close to Guam, a US territory with high strategic importance. Commander Megan Green, a spokesperson for the US 7th Fleet, has previously emphasized Guam's crucial role in maintaining American influence in the Western Pacific. The island houses 3 major military bases, air forces, navy, and marine corps, and sits just 1,500 to 1,700 miles from Taiwan Island. Guam's strategic significance has been evident throughout history, particularly during the first Taiwan Strait crisis in the 1950s. President Dwight Eisenhower deployed the 7th Fleet to the region, intervening in China's internal affairs. Since then, to interfere with the reunification of mainland China and Taiwan, the 7th Fleet's aircraft carriers have twice sailed through the Taiwan Strait. Washington refers to these actions as routine freedom of navigation operations, demonstrating American power in the region. But regarding the encounter between the Chinese and US Navy last month, Megan Green said China and Russia are authorized in accordance with customary international law and conduct operation in international airspace and international waters. She also stated the encounter was safe and professional. On a similar note, let's turn to the British Royal Navy. On the 10th of August, 2 Chinese warships traversed the English Channel for the second time in just 3 weeks. UK Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard emphasized that the Royal Navy closely monitored the situation, ensuring the US remain, in his words, secure at home and strong aboard. However, Indian media outlet The Eurasian Times highlighted a significant disparity, noting that while Chinese warships flexed their muscles in the English channels, the UK could only deploy a ship on the verge of retirement. The ship was in fact the HMS Richmond, a 4,000-ton frigate that has been in service for nearly 30 years. In contrast, the 2 Chinese warships, exceeding 30,000 tons totally, have been in service for less than a decade. This raised questions about the UK's military capability. It is not the first time the HMS Richmond has encountered the Chinese Navy. Back in 2021, the same vessel navigated in the Taiwan Strait, a move profoundly displayed by the British Navy on social media. Now, just 3 years later, the ships met once again in the English Channel. Next up, a Japanese veteran has found the courage to stand up and acknowledge the war crimes committed by Unit 731. On the 13th of August, Shimizu Hideo, a former member of Japanese Biological Warfare Unit 731, went to China to express his apology. He was conscripted into Unit 731 at the age of 14 in 1945 and remained there until Japan's unconditional surrender a few months later. Upon his return to Japan, Shimizu was instructed to keep his involvement with the Unit 731 a secret. During his recent visit, Shimizu visited the former site of Unit 731 in Harbin. It is now an exhibition hall displaying evidence of the war crimes committed by the unit. He recalled witnessing various specimens such as pregnant women and babies soaked in formalin. Shimizu bowed multiple times in front of a monument, expressing his deepest condolences to the victims. At the site, he offered a sincere apology and repentance to the Chinese people. According to Nanjing Daily, Unit 731 was responsible for the murders of over 200,000 Chinese civilians. According to Heckerton International, an American journal of medical, at least 300,000 people died of infectious disease resulting from the work of Unit 731 and its associated laboratories. Apart from China, the victims were from countries including Russia, Korea, the Philippines, and Indonesia. While individuals like Shimizu are actively seeking to apologize for Japanese war crime atrocities, the nation's leader continues to face criticism for its reluctance to fully acknowledge the past. On the 15th of August, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida included a symbolic donation to the Yasukuni Shrine, reignited debate about Japan's accountability for its war crime actions. This shrine honors numerous Japanese war criminals from World War II, including figures like Isoroku Yamamoto, the Japanese officer who commanded the attack on Pearl Harbor, and Masaharu Homma, responsible for the massacre of 30,000 American prisoners of war in the Philippines. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts or comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. We look forward to hearing from you and see you next time.
Thank you, Lisa. Next on the show is the Thinkers Forum, the segment of the show where our thinkers and scholars share with us their brilliant ideas on the relations between China and the rest of the world. Our guest for the first part of this segment is the Minister Delegate attached to the Prime Minister at Royal Government of Cambodia, Dr. Kieth Rethy Chhem.
First, I'd like to thank China Academy for giving me the chance to talk at your studio today. My name is Chhem Kieth Rethy. I'm a professor of technology humanity from Camtech University from Cambodia. That's a very good question about the Belt and Road Initiative because personally I was involved also as a policy researcher for the last 10 years. First, Cambodia being a developing country, we need to develop our infrastructures, road, highway, bridge, port, airport, etc. So with the support, with the funding from the loan from the Belt and Road Initiative, Cambodia was able, for example, to build a road from the capital Phnom Penh to the port Sihanoukville, and then that reduced the time of transportation from 5 to 6 hours to only less than 2 hours. So this is a very big logistic achievement for Cambodian government. On the other hand, also there's a lot of other collaboration. Particularly, I like to probably share an example about people-to-people connectivity because this year is a special year of the Belt and Road Initiative that focus on people-to-people. And for example, yesterday here, I have organized a dinner for 3 Cambodian students who got a scholarship from the government of China. And I have been told, and I was very pleased to hear that just in Beijing, there are more than 300 Cambodian students doing a master or PhD in China. And overall in other provinces, many other places in China, I believe that there are more than 1,000 of Cambodians who studied in China. Today's students will become leaders in the future, 10 to 20 years. They become leaders in the government, in the private sector, in academia. They have studied in China. So during their study here, they learn about China, better knowledge of China. They have professors, they have friends. So I believe that in the future, the relationship between China and Cambodia will be even stronger because they have built a bonding during their stay here in Beijing and anywhere else in China for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah? I believe that in the current situation, Western media misunderstand China. Worse, most of them, they don't know about China. They write about China without visiting China. So I think the one way to educate the public, particularly in the Western world, to know about China's civilization is to promote the image of China through different media, like you did today, and also open up the visa system to allow people to come. You understand the fear of the people of the media. They don't know about China, but China has 4,000 years of history, 1.4 billion. When China rise, I think a lot of people are afraid of that. So it also fall in the responsibility of China to promote that image as a Pacific rise of China. So better communication, more effective communication, and engagement with people who have no knowledge about China but tend to judge without much evidence. Yeah? So overall, it's a matter of branding China as with a positive image. But I travel with China over the last 15 years. I see so much progress. Your infrastructure is amazing. There are no country that can do this kind of progress in such a short time. Socially, China economy rise. Your government lifted 800 million people out of poverty. That's quite an achievement for humankind. It never happened in history. So you have a beautiful story to tell the rest of the world. It's about telling a good story and engagement the rest of the world. To me, China has such a beautiful civilization technology is advancing, to make sure that people are not worried about the rights of China is to communicate in the most effective way. I come to China the last 15 years, I come like at least 20, 25 times, so I know what is China. But most people, they don't know. And also they believe all the bad images that are fabricated by Western media. I believe that it's up to China to try to find a way to promote more visitors to China, and I wish you all the success. So if you look at the interaction between Cambodia and China, Cambodian people and Chinese people, it's a very long story. So about 1500 years ago, the king of ancient Cambodia sent Buddhist monk to China to translate Buddhist sutras from Sanskrit to Chinese. Also, on the other way around, the Emperor of China sent monks or doctors to learn herbal medicine in Cambodia. Also in Cambodia, there are many Chinese who migrated to Cambodia for 1,000 years. And in Cambodia, many Cambodians are descended from Chinese ancestors. Myself, my current name is Cambodian, but actually my initial name is Lee. My great-grandfather came from Fujian province. So with all this connection, if you go to Cambodia, you will meet a lot of Chinese overseas who decide to settle there. So there's a mixture of values that we use in our daily life. Buddhism and Confucianism all mixed together, and that would guide our life, trying to be prosperous, try to cultivate a society that is harmonious and prosperous. So the talk I delivered this morning at the Aristotle Confucius Symposium was about compassionate AI. So it's how to design artificial intelligence system that have some compassion. It's very challenging. How far can we go with that? The future will tell us. But most definitely, if you look at current AI system, they have no consciousness, no emotion, no even morality. So how can we prevent a kind of wild development of technology of AI in the future that break all the rule of morality? Designer of AI system, engineers, scientists, philosopher, we have a role. We make sure that when we design the system, when we write program, we write algorithm, all the elements of good morality, benevolence is embedded in the system. But this has been said, sometimes still we need to monitor to make sure that algorithm program that we have written for the AI system follow the rules that we have included, to make sure that whatever they do in terms of action in the future, the system is benevolent and will not cause any harm to the users of AI. I use compassionate AI as a provocative title, but we cannot expect AI, a system, technological system, that can be compassionate. Can AI be morally responsible? Definitely not, at least for now. So who is responsible then? The human agent. So the person who designed AI program, the person who deploy AI system, and the users have to be aware that when they use AI, they use it wisely. And you're talking about competition between the US and China. This is a geopolitical question. The US has been dominant for a long time, but China is on the rise. And if you compare the US to China, the US is 200 years old. China has 4,000 years of civilization. So if China survive 4,000 years already, they will be here for the next 4,000 years. So what we expect is that both China and US should recognize each mutual strengths and weaknesses and work together for the benefit of the other people who live on this planet. This rivalry is very negative. It carry a risk of a major conflict, and we should avoid that. And building peace mean understanding each other. And this symposium, Aristotle, Confucius, and also Buddha, is a wonderful platform and opportunity for science diplomacy. How, for example, in particular AI, can be developed together for global common goods. Intelligent technology, particularly AI, is a dual technology, mean that it can do good, but it can do bad also. Similar to nuclear technology in the 20th century, you can use nuclear technology to kill cancer cells, to cure cancer, or like some country, they build atomic bomb to drop and to kill civilians. Yeah? So there is a strong need for a global governance of AI in the near future, and all countries should discuss together. I heard also that China, the government of China, has launched a diplomatic initiative called Global Data Security Initiative. And this is one big step to look at how we can monitor, control the use of data for pacific use. And in order for this kind of diplomatic initiative to be successful, there will be needed a strong commitment from all countries, and particularly to come around the table to negotiate for the best interests of the people living on our planet.
Next on the Thinkers Forum is Biljana Vankovska, a full professor of international relations and peace studies and the head of the Global Changes Center, with this editorial on the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And she firmly believes that the power centers around this particular crisis actually already had the idea to escalate the situation, and they were not working for peace. Let's listen to this interview to find out more.
The Ukraine-Russian war is actually something that many peace researchers and even people out of academia could easily predict and warned about the future developments. But sadly, few people in power centers listen to scholars or intellectuals or peace activists. The power centers actually already had the idea to escalate the situation, and they were not working for peace. And the whole story, narrative about NATO enlargement being a process of spreading Western democracy, values, peace, etc., was false, of course, because on the background, we can find many indications that this situation had been prepared. So in 2014, when Euromaidan took place, that was a colored revolution, of course, but few observers or analysts would notice that right after the Ukrainian colored revolution, the next one was Macedonia. My country is a part of former Yugoslavia, but the way to NATO and EU integrations was obstructed by our southern neighbor Greece, who objected the name of the country, Macedonia. So due to this problem, which is very emotional and very important for the people, because we have no other reserved identity but being what we are, and we consider ourselves Macedonians. Many governments didn't even try to really change the name or do something radical in this sense. So the colored revolution actually helped remove the previous government that was stubborn, that didn't want to follow the guidelines from the West. And West got nervous, actually, and didn't want this small, tiny, little country to spoil their grand strategy. Macedonia is not important per se. It's a very small territory, just 2 million people, but it makes a problem in the entire Balkan puzzle. So let me remind us that in 2005, almost 2 decades ago, it was the former U.S. State Secretary John Kerry who said that Macedonia, Serbia, and these countries in the so-called Western Balkans are on the front line, meaning front line of a future conflict, which means that they had it in the cards. Everything is interlinked. What happened in Ukraine is followed in Macedonia. Macedonia got into NATO, and that is presented as some kind of achievement, some kind of contribution of the government that finally made this dream strategic goal achieved, for the people. Sadly, Ukraine paid much higher price than Macedonia. We paid with losing our sovereignty, our constitutional identity, our history. So this identity package is what we sacrificed on the altar of NATO membership, while Ukrainians are suffering really in terms of human loss, destruction, and all that. Everything could have been avoided, of course. I oppose NATO not only in my country, in Macedonia, but also in the entire region of former Yugoslavia. It is because of an obvious reason. If you have a region that suffered from terrible turmoil, bloody conflicts, and the consequences are still here. We still remember that it is still so fresh and painful for the societies. There is still no reconciliation. Young people are leaving. Brain drain is massive. And people want to live a decent life. Why on earth military alliance? The problem with NATO is that NATO is unable and actually never promised to resolve the existential, social, economic, political, interethnic, or societal problems of these societies. So getting in alliance was promised here as some kind of miracle, some magic, that once we are in NATO, we are safe, we are going to be rich, everything will be perfect. So it was a fairy tale story for little children, not for adults. Now, when we are part of NATO, the irony is that we are a warring party in a proxy war. Macedonia is a poor country, and sadly, it belongs to 18 countries that are members of NATO who invest more than 2% of their GDP for military budget, not only for the membership fee to NATO, but also modernization of the army, and now military support for Ukraine. So we are investing from our poverty, supporting war, not peace. We, the people who know what war really means, are now joining a military crusade, and actually we are on the wrong side of history. We are in a worse situation than before. We are currently on the list of non-friendly countries of Russia. Why? Why should Macedonia, a small country, or even a bigger country, make enemies? Instead of making friendships, we are making enemies. And in a case of a nuclear Holocaust or whatever, we are really on this front line. Due to the part that Yugoslavia fell apart, Macedonia, as a poor, tiny country with no statehood experience and traditions, really found itself in a very hard situation. There was a narrative against our own historical traditions and identities, saying that we need to be part of the West, that we are the West. But somehow during the communist times, we are not allowed, or we were part of a different interest sphere or whatever. The problem is that the Balkans is on a geographic position where civilizations have been meeting each other, crossing each other, influencing each other. So we cannot be just the West. We are also the East, or we have something of our own to offer the world. Nevertheless, the NATO and EU as strategic goals have been highest on the top agenda of the political elites. elites who were incapable, corrupted, didn't or were unable to provide for the people to cover the basic human needs, to establish the normal, decent state and everything else. So this is like a religion. Let's believe this, not question it. This is the TINA principle. There is no alternative to NATO, to EU, to capitalism, open market, political liberalism. But then it was easy to adopt a new constitution and to make it copy-paste from the Western constitutions and to adopt some kind of parliamentary democracy. But it could not work in reality because the elections are a farce. The political elites are making love with the people, but they are always loyal to the international community, meaning the West. So in a region devastated by wars and conflicts, the Western powers came under the cloak of international community. They took over that name, not rightly so, of course, because they never represented the entire world, and they promoted themselves into peace builders and state builders. We practically, with the end of history, the Fukuyama's famous phrase, we did not only lose our traditions and our past, but we also lost our agency, our right for political self-determination or any other type of deciding of our own future. We were treated as infantile societies that should be taught some elementary things. We are just fooling ourselves that we are living in democracy, that we are deciding on something. This is a region, sadly, where all the countries allegedly independent are actually colonies. There is a neo-colonialism at place here. They would never take responsibility for the consequences. And we are the ones, the locals, who live with their consequences, with the consequences of their medicines. Western medicines produce iatrogenetic effects, which means they make the patient more sick than before. We spoke about the foreign policy. I just cannot imagine that Macedonian elites simply deleted from their memory the fact that Yugoslavia was one of the major respected foreign policy players in a very critical period of time during the Cold War. So it was possible. There was high quality diplomacy, knowledge about the world in its totality. I remember the time when I was proud of my country. That is something, to be proud of being Yugoslav or Macedonian, and these two were not in contradiction. You could be both, at the same time. It took me a while to understand that when we talk about resolving the problems in our societies or wider in the region, let alone globally, we face a very powerful complex, and that is the military, industrial, media, academia complex. Some colleagues mention even entertainment industry as something that make people distracted from reality, indulging some other games or whatever, just not to face what is really happening. The real diagnosis and the root problem here is that for the last more than 3 decades, as we are allegedly independent states, the Western power centers actually designed the minds of the elites who are, as I said, loyal. They taught them, to talk with their language, their rhetoric, to behave in the that way, and then that spread into the media, who are not professional or objective. They're financed by the Western funds. We never hear anything about China, about developments, technological, cultural. Now we are seeing on Olympic Games how far has China's sport gone with a lot of successes and all that. And not only China, of course, but there is a world around, not only the West. But these political elites joined with the media elites. And unfortunately, my colleagues from the academia, they are all together. They are brown sahibs. They are, part of this colonial history where the colonial power would need local people to manage things, to administer territories. So these brown sahibs actually want to be Westerners, even if they are not. So this goes generation by generation. A country that is not allowed to have its internal sovereign home policy, it doesn't have foreign policy at all. I argue, and I can prove that a country like mine and Montenegro and Bosnia-Herzegovina, or even Croatia that is part of NATO and EU, they even think that they don't need a foreign policy because somebody else decides on the main roads of where we are going, where to invest, where to fight, whom to fight, who is the enemy, who is the friend. So the foreign policy is something that is a luxury, unfortunately, that we don't have. That is a brutal truth. The decline of the West is nothing new. It is a long-term process. It was maybe 20 years ago. We were talking about that as a prediction that something is going to happen with this society because it is not sustainable. It is based on violent culture. We can see that now in the elections. I mean, this looks like anything but democratic elections. Not to talk about growing social inequalities, poverty, homeless people on the streets, decadence in political and cultural sphere. So now they are going downhills. Not now, but for a long time. My only concern is that when empires in the past would come to an end, it would cost a lot of human lives. And that is what I'm not concerned about the future of United States. It is a concern of their citizens. But I'm concerned because of my safety and my security and of my people depends on the president of the United States more than of the president of my country. Because the impact of the American policy, as I mentioned, NATO is just a facade for American imperialist marching. NATO is growing into global NATO. They want to swallow the United Nations system. This is a madness. And of course, the price will be paid by ordinary people, by simple people, by a small country or bigger countries. Nevertheless, we will be all collateral damage of the fall of the empire.
And that's all for the show this morning. It's been a great morning filled with great content. I hope you enjoyed every bit of it. If you have any comments or suggestions for the coming episodes of the show, please let us know through the email provided below. On behalf of the entire production team, we say thank you for your time. My name is Makiza Latifa, and I'll see you same time next week. Have a good morning.